Get the medic out of the line of fire. We need a shooter, not a glorified Band-Aid dispenser." The crowd laughed. A few nervous, sycophantic chuckles rippled through the observation post, aimed more at appeasing the bellowing sergeant than at the subject of his scorn. Specialist Anya Sharma didn't flinch. She didn't turn. Her hands, wrapped in sterile blue nitrile gloves as she organized a plasma kit, remained impossibly steady. Her gaze was fixed on the crisis unfolding downrange, a flickering monitor displaying the chaos of the simulated village where their designated marksman had just been taken out by a remote explosive. The air was thick with the smell of cordite and panicked radio chatter. Sergeant Cole, a man whose voice was perpetually set to a volume that suggested he was compensating for some deep-seated inadequacy, paced behind the line of analysts. His shadow fell across Sharma, but she gave no indication she felt it. She was a study in stillness, a small, unassuming figure lost in the sea of tactical gear and digital screens. But when the captain, a veteran officer named Marcus Thorne, saw the way her eyes tracked the distant heat signature, the way she instinctively checked the windage flags on the screen not with a soldier's glance, but with a mathematician's calculation, a forgotten memory clicked into place. He saw not a medic, but a predator assessing its environment with a calm that bordered on supernatural. If you believe true professionals let their actions speak for them, type competence below. Sergeant Cole was not finished. His arrogance was a force of nature, a hurricane of insecurity that needed to constantly make landfall on someone else. "I'm serious, Captain," he boomed, gesturing with a dismissive wave at Sharma. "What is she even doing here? This is Overwatch Command, not a field hospital. We have a confirmed hostile sniper pinning down Alpha Team. Our own marksman is down. And she's, what? Counting gauze? We need a solution with a 762mm payload, not saline solution." His words were poison darts, each one intended to diminish and humiliate. He saw her medic patch, her smaller frame, her gender, and his mind, a blunt instrument of prejudice, drew its foregone conclusion. The other soldiers in the room shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between the furious sergeant, the impassive specialist, and the silent captain. They were complicit in their silence, caught between the institutional fear of a loud superior and the nascent, confusing respect for Sharma's unnerving calm. She continued her work, her movements economical and precise. She finished organizing the trauma kit, closed the lid with a soft click that seemed to echo in the tense room, and folded her hands. She did not speak. Her silence was a mirror, reflecting Cole's ignorance back at him with blinding intensity. It was a silence that spoke of discipline, of a deep well of confidence that required no external validation. It was the silence of a professional waiting for the noise to stop. The radio crackled. The voice of Alpha Team's leader strained with desperation. "Command, we are pinned. Hostile has a remote detonator for the main bridge IED. We can see it on a tripod, maybe 1,100 meters out, but he's got us zeroed. We can't move. We can't get a shot. Our backup marksman is rattled. His scope took shrapnel. We need a miracle." The atmosphere in the command post solidified, the air growing heavy with the weight of impending failure. The training exercise was escalating into a full-blown crisis simulation, and they were losing. Captain Thorne looked at the backup shooter, a young corporal whose face was pale and slick with sweat. The boy's confidence was shattered. He wouldn't make the shot. Thorne's eyes then moved back to Sharma. She was watching the monitor, her head tilted slightly, her expression unreadable but intensely focused. He saw it again, the subtle shift in posture, the almost imperceptible narrowing of her eyes. It was a look he hadn't seen in years, not since a classified briefing in a windowless room in Kandahar. It was the look of a weapon system calculating a firing solution. He made a decision that would either end his career or become a legend. He keyed his mic, his voice cutting through the static with absolute authority. "Hold your position, Alpha. A solution is coming." He then turned to Sergeant Cole, his gaze like iron. "Sergeant, give Specialist Sharma the M2 10-inch for a moment." Cole could only blink, his mouth agape. "Sir?" he stammered, the disbelief palpable. Thorne's voice dropped, becoming lethally quiet. "She's not just a medic. Give her the rifle." Now, the act that followed was not one of aggression, but of pure, fluid competence. It was a ceremony of skill. Sergeant Cole, utterly bewildered, unslung the M210 enhanced sniper rifle, its carbon fiber stock and advanced optics making it look like a tool from the future. He held it out awkwardly. Sharma approached, her movements still measured and calm. She took the weapon, and in that single moment of contact, a transformation occurred. The rifle did not seem like a borrowed tool in her hands. It seemed like it had returned home. Her grip was perfect, her posture flawless as she settled into the firing cradle. She didn't need to adjust the stock or the cheek rest. Her body knew the weapon's dimensions intimately. She ignored the high-tech digital scope, instead leaning into the primary optical sight with a practiced ease that stunned the onlookers. Her left hand slid under the stock, her fingers finding a familiar resting place. Her breathing slowed, each exhalation a long, controlled plume in the cool air of the command center. She became part of the machine. The room held its collective breath, the only sound the faint hum of electronics. She made a minute adjustment to the elevation turret, a single, sharp click. Then, another for windage. Her eye never left the scope. There was a long, perfect pause, a moment of absolute stillness between cause and effect. Then came the clean, surgical crack of the rifle firing. It was not a roar, but a sharp, definitive statement. In the deafening silence that followed, every eye was glued to the monitor, watching a tiny, distant puff of dust and shattered electronics where the detonator had been just a second before. A voice, trembling with awe, came over the radio from Alpha Team's leader. Target destroyed. Holy command, who made that shot? Who the hell just did that? The observation post was a vacuum of disbelief. Soldiers stared, mouths agape, at the screen, then at the small, quiet woman who was now methodically clearing the M210's chamber. She placed the ejected brass casing, a small, gleaming piece of metal, carefully on the console beside her. Her face betrayed no emotion, no triumph, no relief. It was the face of someone who had simply completed a task for which they were designed. Sergeant Cole looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, his face a canvas of confusion, shock, and dawning horror at the magnitude of his own ignorance. Captain Thorne, however, showed no surprise. He simply walked past the stunned crowd, his boots making quiet, purposeful sounds on the concrete floor. He didn't go to Sharma. He didn't go to the rifle. He went to his command terminal and keyed in a security override. A classified personnel file flashed onto the main screen, its header stamped with warnings in stark red letters. He found the entry he was looking for. The narrator of this moment was not a person, but the cold, hard text on the screen, a staccato rhythm of unbelievable truth. Unit, Special Activities Division, Asymmetric Warfare Group. Primary Specialty, Special Operations Medic. Secondary Specialty, Master Sniper, Tier 1 Overwatch. Medals, Silver Star with Valor, Distinguished Marksman Badge, Presidential Unit Citation. Mission Classifications, Project Ghost. Project Chimera. The list went on, a litany of silent, deadly accomplishments hidden behind a simple medic's patch. The data scrolled across the screen, each line a hammer blow to the assumptions that had filled the room only moments before. The silence was now one of reverence, of profound, world-altering shock. Captain Thorne turned away from the screen, his expression one of immense gravity and respect. He walked directly to Specialist Sharma, who had finished securing the rifle and was standing at ease. He stopped a precise 2 feet in front of her, drew himself to his full height, and rendered the sharpest, most formal salute of his career. It was a gesture of deep institutional apology and personal deference. "Specialist," he said, his voice resonating with authority, "your file doesn't do you justice. On behalf of this command, I apologize for the unprofessional reception." He then turned to face the rest of the room, his eyes finding and locking onto Sergeant Cole. "Let me be clear for everyone here," Thorne began, his voice cold and precise. "You are not looking at a medic. You are looking at one of the single most effective combat assets this country has ever produced. She is a graduate of every advanced marksmanship course we have. Her confirmed engagement record is longer and more classified than my entire career. The only reason she wears a medic's patch is because, on top of everything else, she is also qualified to put our people back together after a fight. We are not worthy of her presence. Your assumptions were not just wrong. They were a disgrace to the uniform you wear. Do you understand me?" The collective shame in the room was a palpable force, thick and suffocating. Cole could only manage a choked, "Yes, sir." The story of the shot, and the reveal that followed, did not just spread, it detonated. It moved through the base like a shockwave, traveling from the high-tech command center to the dusty barracks, the greasy mess halls, and the hushed briefing rooms. It became an instant legend, a piece of institutional folklore passed in whispers and awed tones. The details shifted with each telling, the distance growing longer, the target smaller, but the core truth remained immutable. The quiet medic was a ghost, a living legend hiding in plain sight. They gave her a name, spoken with a mixture of fear and reverence. The surgeon. The name captured the impossible duality of her existence. The one who could take a life with inhuman precision from a kilometer away, and the one who could save a life with steady, gentle hands up close. Sergeant Cole became an unwilling protagonist in the tale, a cautionary figure representing the danger of loud, unearned confidence. He was seen days later in the video archives, watching the playback of the shot over and over again. He wasn't looking for a flaw. He was looking for comprehension, trying to understand how a person could possess such a profound level of skill and yet remain so utterly devoid of ego. He watched her calm breathing, her seamless motion, the absolute economy of her actions, and for the first time in his career, he understood the vast, terrifying gap between being loud and being competent. His own blustering arrogance now seemed pathetic, a child's tantrum in the presence of a master. A week later, Sergeant Cole found her in the armory. She wasn't required to, but she was meticulously cleaning the M210 rifle, breaking it down with a practiced familiarity that was mesmerizing to watch. He stood in the doorway for a full minute, wrestling with the toxic brew of his shame and a newfound, grudging respect. Finally, he stepped inside, the sound of his boots echoing in the quiet space. "Specialist," he began, his voice uncharacteristically quiet, stripped of its usual bravado. I came to apologize. What I said in the OPC, it was out of line. It was ignorant. There's no excuse for it." Sharma didn't stop her work. She continued wiping down the bolt carrier group with a solvent-soaked cloth, her focus absolute. For a moment, Cole thought she was going to ignore him completely, a silent rebuke more damning than any verbal lashing. But then she paused, looked up at him, her eyes clear and direct. She gave a single, curt nod. "Apology accepted, Sergeant," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Then she did something that cemented her legend more than the shot ever could. She held up the scope. "Your backup marksman was struggling with parallax," she stated simply. "At that distance, even a hair's breadth of misalignment will send the round wide. Show him how to set the diopter for his eye. It will steady his confidence." It wasn't forgiveness. It was a lesson, a quiet, professional act of mentorship that demonstrated her worth was not in her past accomplishments, but in her present commitment to the team's competence. The spent casing from her shot was later mounted on a wooden plaque in the command center, engraved with the date, the distance, and a single word: precision. A year passed. A new class of young, eager soldiers was cycling through the same Joint Readiness Training Center. They stood in the same Overwatch command post, listening to their instructor. The instructor was Sergeant Cole. He was a different man. The volume was gone, replaced by a quiet authority that commanded more respect than his previous bellowing ever had. He pointed a thumb toward the plaque on the wall, the one with the single brass casing gleaming under the halogen lights. "Look at that," he told the recruits. "That casing represents the most important lesson you will ever learn out here. It's not about yelling the loudest or having the most patches on your uniform. It's about competence." He then told them the story. He didn't spare himself, recounting his own arrogant words with brutal honesty. He told them about the quiet medic, the impossible shot, and the shocking reveal of her file. He used his own failure as a teaching tool. "You will serve with people whose true capabilities are buried under layers of classification you will never be privy to," he said, his voice resonating with hard-won wisdom. "Your job is not to assume. Your job is not to judge. Your job is to shut your mouth, observe, and trust that the person standing next to you is a professional. Respect is not given, it is earned. And sometimes, the one who has earned it the most is the one who speaks the least." Specialist Sharma was long gone, a ghost reassigned to another shadow war, in some forgotten corner of the world. But her legacy was here, a permanent fixture in the institutional memory of this place, shaping a better generation of leaders. True legacy is not a monument of stone or a name etched on a wall. It is not found in the stories told, but in the lessons learned. Anya Sharma's legacy was not in the single, perfect shot she made that day. It was in the silence that followed. It was in the shattering of assumptions, the recalibration of respect. Her quiet professionalism became a standard, a quiet ripple that spread outwards, reinforcing the bedrock principle that action will always be the final arbiter of worth. She proved that competence has no gender, no rank, no predetermined appearance. It is a force of nature, a truth that reveals itself under pressure. The world is full of noise, of people clamoring for attention, demanding respect they have not earned. But behind that wall of sound, there are the quiet professionals. The surgeons, the pilots, the engineers, the soldiers. They are the ones who do not speak of their value, for they are too busy demonstrating it. They are the load-bearing walls of society, holding everything up while others argue about the color of the paint. The story of the surgeon became more than a legend. It became a parable for a new ethos. Look for the quiet ones. Trust the steady hands. And never, ever mistake silence for weakness, for it is often the calm before the demonstration of true mastery. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption and where silent precision defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.